Okay, good afternoon, Net Inclusion. Thank you for those of you who are still in the room, and thank you for that clap. That one person, that was awesome. That was a wonderful introduction, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And I don't like to take credit for other people's work, and it's the team that does all of this. So thank you to my fabulous team. My name is Gina Cooper-Benjamin, and I'm the Deputy Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, or NDIA. For those of you virtually or in this room who are new to the conference, NDIA advances digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. The way that we do this is we provide spaces and opportunities for our over 1,600 affiliate organizations to come together for friendship, fellowship, fun, sharing, learning, thus net inclusion. So we're going to the way that this panel is going to work is I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. We're going to have a moderated conversation, and then I hopefully will have enough time for Q&A at the end, and then we'll wrap it up. Before I get started, I'd like to just set some norms for everyone. Please be respectful of each other and the panelists. It's hard sitting up here. The lights are bright. They're in your eyes. Can't really see you, so side conversations can be distracting, or if it looks like your attention is elsewhere, it's a little distracting. Mind the topic. And let's enjoy this time together. And please write down any questions for the end, because even if you can't ask them for the Q&A, you could send messages to the to these experts. Okay, so I just want to make sure everyone's in the right place. There's no other place you can be, but I like to do this too. Right now, we're going to be discussing digital inclusion work in difficult political environments. Some of the outcomes for today are what it's like to do this work in tribal lands. We're going to cover impact and celebrations in a progressive city within a state trying to stymie progress, and then a framework for working across political differences in a large U.S. city. So thank you all for being here. Today I'm joined by Ernie Rasmussen of Bigfoot Communications of the Colville Tribes, Deb Sosha of the Enterprise Center of Chattanooga, and Catherine Crago-Blanton who's involved in Austin Pathways and was a 2023 Digital Equity Champion. So thank you all for being here. Okay. To start, I'd like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves, share your names, your titles, your organizations, and then I like to start all difficult conversations with people uplifting a bright spot in their communities. So just share one bright spot from each of your communities. Ernie, you can go first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's see, make sure I'm close enough. Hi, everybody. My name is, let me begin in the way that I've been taught and the way that I can respect my community. Poso on it, not. Hello, how are you? Yom Keskut Kes Mau Mats Yom Kon. And it's just a small phrase that introduces myself and this age that we find ourselves in. And it's a line out of what is known as the spring story that I was taught when I was growing up in the Menominee Reservation in northeastern Wisconsin. And it's about a new emergence as spring comes forward, and that we have an opportunity to see new growth. And I think following the comments of Chairman Davison and the conversation with our esteemed leader Angela, we're in that moment. We find ourselves in that moment of renewed energy in this space to support all those marginalized voices, those historically marginalized, those folks that have been left behind, to all of a sudden find new roots, to sprout new roots, and to do good work. And so with that, I'll close, and I want to thank you for the opportunity and pass it on.
Ready? Yes. So I'm Deb Sosha, and I'm the president and the CEO of the Enterprise Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we unite people, organizations, and technology to build an advanced and inclusive future for our community. So first, I'd love to shout out my colleagues at the Enterprise Center who did so for me a minute ago. They are both here, and I'm back home in Chattanooga. But I was asked to tell you what I love about my community. There are so many things I love about Chattanooga, but what I really love is our willingness to step up and solve big, chunky issues. So an example of that, in Chattanooga, when the pandemic started, our school children had no connectivity. I think you remember this. And so we got together with the head of our school system, the mayor, the local philanthropy, our municipal broadband system, which is EPB, and we actually have been able to connect 17,000 children to 300 megabits symmetrical, as the floor could be higher, at no cost to their families. So people like to think that that happened because we have a municipal broadband system, and to be clear, they are absolutely essential. But there are plenty of municipal broadband systems that didn't get it done. And so I'd say why we got it done is our willingness to work together.
Thank you, Catherine.
Hey, friends. It's really packed, and many people I see suitcases, and it's great to see everyone again this year. I am Catherine Craig-Blanton. In my day job, I lead a digital inclusion initiative at Austin Pathways, a nonprofit of the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. And when we started this conversation, Gina, about my role in volunteer work and being a founding member of the Texas Digital Equity Network, which is a loose coalition with many friends in the room. I think Deanne Cuellar is here, and I know CTN is here as well. Sky Downing, Muniri Jester, I know Jess Ross is here, and John Spears is not, but many of us, we came together to really respond to BEAD and DEA rolling out so quickly. How can we fill in those missing pieces for those agencies that are charged with living the spirit of the law and the funds? I actually started my career in digital inclusion at the Texas Department of Insurance, consulting on how to make sure those TDI services were available to Texans through digital tools, but also when that hurricane comes and people are suddenly on the wrong side of the digital divide, how do we recover more quickly?
Okay, thank you all. Okay, before I get into questions with the panelists, I have 3 questions for you guys, okay? Christy said she would mic run. Is there okay, thank you, Christy. So I want one person to answer each question, okay? If you're working in a difficult environment, name one thing you're wondering if you can keep going with that. So think about your current environments. If you're working in one of those difficult political environments, name one thing, maybe it's an initiative, a project, a program, you're wondering, a policy, I don't know, you're wondering if you should keep going with that work. I also have a different version of that question too, so. Okay, so what is one thing you are wondering if you should start with this in these difficult environments?
Hi, Jamie Harris with World Education. One question that I'm wrestling with is the use of the term inclusion and how to approach work in environments where inclusion, diversity is not encouraged. What's a good approach?
Thank you. Does anyone else want to have another challenge that they want to raise? Sorry, I can't, the light is so bright.
Thank you for that question. Yes, in the political environment, this is our work. is to include people. It's to provide equity and opportunity. How do we actually do this equity work when inclusion, equity, diversity is surrounding us, but we have to eliminate it out of our job title? I understand the difference in opportunity and equity. Can we add opportunity to it instead of eliminating what we're actually doing? I just want to open that conversation.
Thank you. Is there one more? And then I'm going to get into my questions, because I think these are topics that that the panelists will. Isaac up front has a question. Can you stand up, Isaac? And Abby's coming to you with the mic.
Thank you. I guess one thing that I've been wondering about a lot is, related to digital inclusion work, there are certain entities and organizations that, might stand in the way of achieving certain goals related to digital equity. And since these organizations do have a lot of power and influence, I'm just wondering, if we truly did want to work towards digital equity, emphasis on the word equity, how do we navigate working around these organizations that do hold a lot of power and stand in the way of achieving equity?
Thank you, Isaac. Okay, so this was just an opportunity for the panelists to hear some of what's in the audience, what's on your brains, what's on your minds, so that they can craft some of their responses to answer some of those questions. I'm going to start my questions with Ernie. Okay, Ernie, you and I have had plenty of conversations, and you've really done a great job of helping me, I still have a lot of learning to do, but to understand some of the intricacies between federal government, tribal government, and digital equity, right? And so I want you to share with the audience, what are some of those challenges? Especially as they relate to the different sectors, like let's say healthcare, and then what are some of the solutions that you see what are some of these problems or some of these hurdles?
So beginning with the end in mind, right? Go back to some of our traditional teachings of, what is our vision for the work that we're doing. And we've heard some comment around coalition building coming from Chairman Davidson. And I want to recognize again that the power of coalitions, when we consider there's 574, federally recognized tribes, and the common misnomer out there is that if we're connected with a tribe, and so that is my representation, and that's my connection to all of Indian country. And then rather than approaching it as this is, and you can extract from this your own understanding of connection to community. If I'm going to say that I'm connected to this one community, I'm connected to this one community. If you know one tribe, you know one tribe. You don't. There's so much language diversity out there. There's cultural diversity. And we talk about the challenges around cultural competency with digital navigators coming into communities and really understanding the work that's necessary for it to be sustainable. And I'm going to offer again coalition building as a real key to success. That does not happen in a vacuum. That happens in places like this. That happens in places where it's been intentionally carved out for voices that have been marginalized, voices that have been left behind, and for them to be elevated, for them to be amplified. I want to call out that NDIA 2 years ago in Portland announced a transformative partnership with Amaranth Critical Infrastructure. Amaranth Critical Infrastructure is an organization that works to protect tribal communities from harm. And this space, this emerging digital equity space, is one where there is an opportunity for harm. Additional harm to communities that have been underrepresented, been left behind, and coalition building, and through folks like Angela and NDIA to create the opportunity to bring people together and create coalitions, help understand where the resources are that are going to support those coalitions, because it's one thing to say, yes, we got a coalition, it's another to resource it. And by bringing in NDIA and Amerind Critical Infrastructure, resourcing a staff person at Amerind, or excuse me, from Amerind to NDIA to continue the coalition building that was necessary in Indian country to protect us from that harm is a key component to success. So I'll stop there before I take all the time.
Thank you, Ernie. Deb, I'll ask you a question. So we've had many discussions about the incredible work you're doing in Chattanooga to advance digital equity and some of the work you're doing while, supporting LGBTQ+ community members. You've made it clear to me that you understand that this is an issue within the political systems that you navigate, and it's not isolated there. This is happening across the country, right? So I guess my question to you is, while advocating for community members, how do you balance? Like, how do you advance digital equity? How do you advance digital equity while doing some of that, while addressing other inequities, and still end up in front of the governor on working on the digital equity plan? How do you do that? And then I think people could really use, you've been doing this a while, so people could really use some guidance, especially younger people who, if, for instance, I might not go into a room and say some of the things you say. How do we do that without, getting fired,
Well, first, I want to acknowledge that this conference was going to be in Chattanooga this year. And the decision to move it here was in part due to the proposed and passed anti-trans laws in Tennessee. The scary news is that there are only 3 states that do not have proposed or passed anti-trans laws in our entire country. So we, as a collective, need to be standing with our trans friends, neighbors, and really advocating for them. And so it's true, in standing up for those who are targeted, I have an advantage because I'm old. I'm on the other end of my career from a lot of folks in this space. So I feel like I can speak up and be a bit more edgy in my comments. I don't have children at home to support, just those grandbabies. But I don't have children at home to support. I'm close to retirement. It's okay. I can be a little bit more bold than I think I could early in my career. By the way, though a lot of folks will tell you that the folks in the South don't want to use equity, I use that word every day. So I don't get a lot of pushback about that. So the advice, if I were giving advice to young folks, I have 6 quick comments I'll make. 1, join a larger group of people who are also speaking out, because there's power and safety in numbers. Tell the story. Don't just say this law is awful. Talk about why and who is being impacted, and better yet, have somebody who is impacted tell their own story. Legislators are motivated by voters. If we push back, it is helpful. The more we do that, the more likely the outcome will be different. Encourage people to call their legislators, far more effective than an email. Share the process for commenting on notices of proposed rulemaking at the FCC. It's so easy, but people are sometimes intimidated, so help people do that. Understand that for some legislators, going against their party is fraught. And if that's the case, guess what? We need to elect somebody else. So run for office, get somebody you know to run for office, vote every time you can, and really push forward alternative candidates. Next, build a coalition of like-minded people. Get someone who is older, maybe, or who has the ability to push harder to be the spokesperson. And I think if you know me at all, you know I'm going to say trust, right? Because it's all related to trust. We need to work on building trust, not just with those we serve, but with each other. We need to build stronger coalitions. And what I tell folks is the time to build that network, sort of as Ernie was talking about, is before you need that network, right? So we need to be working together, and we need to be doing it now.
Thank you, Deb. Catherine, you and I bond often over like human-centered approaches, so you putting people first. You talked to me about ways to ensure, and you in Austin, you have to work across different political ideologies, right? It's one of the biggest cities, and there are a lot of different views. You, while working across differences, how do you make sure there's equity in decisions? You and I discussed a 3-factor framework. You talked about financial, strategic, operations. Can you go back a little bit into that strategy for folks, especially those of us who have to work across different political ideologies and, uplift shared goals?
Yeah, well, I guess, it's interesting because, Deb was talking about that storytelling, that's really important. And, if you picture your state, there's a geography of stories across the state, and those stories are grounded in those deep roots from those areas of the state where there's, maybe varying political ideologies. There is a geography of trust. There is a geography of trust across the state, and in Texas Den, for example, there are members of that coalition who volunteer, who come from counties across the state who have very different ideologies at times, but they know how to tell the story of their constituents, of the people that they serve, and their hero's journey. Those individuals have to cross the same chasms that, those individuals in the east part of the state have to cross those same chasms as the individuals in the south and the west part of the state. A shared journey that we all have, that when greatness is thrust upon us, it's often because, what is driving our work? It's a technology roadmap. You see Dell outside, they have a great bot that's like answering questions in the context of digital equity. Like, I don't know if you all have tried, but it's in the context of digital equity. Here's the answer to your question. And Dell has a technology roadmap. Broadband companies have technology roadmaps. Educational tech companies have technology roadmaps. And the issue that we have as these things are rolling out is there can be timing mismatches, right? Everybody doesn't collaborate on that. There can be stressors and shocks that happen. And, the only way that we have, that I know of, to overcome those stressors and shocks, when the future doesn't unroll as we anticipate, it's that human dimension. That's the human connection. The human connection is what drives technology adoption. Going back to the 30s, the government was like, how can we make more food for Americans? And let's go talk to the farmers across the Midwest. These studies have been done for decades and decades. The only thing that drives technology adoption is I trust my neighbor, and my neighbor has said that they're using this and it's working and it's making a better future for their family, for society. And so that is something that we kind of all share. In terms of decision making, every organization designs, develops, and deploys, evaluates technologies, and there are some decisions in that process that humans that people with lived experience have to be a part of.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so I have more questions, but I also want to hear from you guys because I think that the panelists would like to hear some questions from you. So we have 2 mics in the audience. One is on a stand. Well, Christy has one. I can see Christy, and Abby has one. If you have questions for the panelists, how about you raise your hand and I will try and guide the mic holders to you. There's one in the back, Christy.
Okay, raise your hand. Oh, me. Who? Oh.
Thank you so much, and for all of the risks that you've taken to accomplish the work that you have achieved already. I think we've been hearing a lot about coalition building and even the word consortiums coming up, and in the context of a lot of money. And I think for me in college, I was taught that politics is the allocation of scarce resources, which means this is going to be one of the most political moments. So my question is, do you have advice for those of us who are doing the work, who may be invited into spaces with people who aren't really doing the work very well, to get the work done together, because they may already have the power or the spot at the table?
That's a great question. I can tell each of you wants to answer because you're all looking at me. Okay, who wants to go first?
So one of the things that I want to jump into is, again, where does that power lie? And again, as a tribal government, there's a requirement on state broadband offices for consultation. It is a check-the-box moment. They can go back to NTIA and they can say, yes, we have done tribal consultation. That is not a real relationship. It is not a real government-to-government encounter. It is simply a moment where they ask, what do you want? And what are your concerns and how can we be a better partner? And then they can simply walk away and never act on that. And we actually have that example that exactly happened in Washington State. We went through a process of tribal consultation, and 2 weeks later, we said we do not want our data to be used out of the context of it benefiting the tribal community. We do not want any type of project or funding to go to an outside agency that says they're going to provide those services to our community. 2 weeks after that consultation, they made an award to an organization that misspelled the name of the Colville tribes. They put us on the hook for data reporting to the project, and we were an unfunded partner. Again, so we're challenging, not just the Washington State Broadband Office, but all state broadband offices that have a requirement to tribes to begin to develop an authentic relationship, to get into that place where we can understand what our differences are, how we can benefit each other, and begin to give back. So that 3 R's of relationship, respect, and reciprocity becomes one of those key components to actually getting beyond these nebulous and difficult, where does the power lie? And as the tribal liaison for the Washington State Department of Commerce, one of the things that I saw happen was this incredibly terrible dynamic where the director of the Department of Commerce, the largest agency in the state, sat down with and she was just a tiny woman at the time, just tiny. And she sat down with a big burly tribal chairman and she said, how can I help you? And just immediately, his body language went down and the power dynamic in that room went from, I have resources, you do not, what can I do? What you need me more than I need you. So we changed the language. How can we partner? That was my challenge back to that director. How can we partner with you? Because we know that, just as Chairman Daverson had said, when internet is coming to those communities, we will benefit more across society from inclusion of all these voices than just saying, hey, we're here to connect you so you can engage in e-commerce, and the way I say it is social media and shopping. So, it's a great question, and it's incredibly challenging process to get through, and I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ernie. Catherine?
I mean, that image, right, of that letter of support, right? Yeah. That image of, we need a letter of support. And by the way, what page is that on in your proposal? In your 250-page proposal, it's page 251, right? I think we have to, just very tactically picking up on that, we have to look for, when we talk about what is an authentic relationship, the tactics of that, the practical, the calculus of that could be, what is the frequency of our interaction and how long will that interaction last? So one of the things that, in my day job at the Housing Authority of the City of Austin, that we do is when we have funding, we require the funder to engage residents in each part of the delivery of the work. They're going to be there when you're designing this, they're going to be there when you're developing it, they're going to be there when you're deploying it, and they're going to be there when it's evaluated. And it's a two-way street. You're not just going to open the door of the community room at this property. Those residents are going to come and open the door at your office. And you're going to have this kind of validation process that's happening, step by step. But we have to have a lot of courage, in our coalition building and other venues, not to take money without that engagement. Right? We have to say, thank you so much, and there's time that we're requiring. There's some emotional labor here. There's some unpaid labor, typically, that needs to be paid. Those residents should be paid for their work.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Catherine. Deb, did you have something you wanted to add?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I love your story. I hate that it happened to y'all, but it's so indicative of an issue that exists across the country. And I heard somebody talk about something similar this morning, a woman from the panel on what's happening in the Black South. Mm-hmm. And really it's not about us without us, right? And I think we need to take that to heart. And I think your suggestion of saying, how can we partner, really helps. But I guess my biggest worry at this very moment in time is there is a ton of money coming. And I'm worried that folks will claim knowledge that maybe they don't quite have, will take on projects they may not be able to successfully complete, and then go away when the money is gone. And I saw this happen during the Obama stimulus grant years. We received one of those way back when, and what happened afterward was, a lot of those organizations were just plain gone. So I'm going to suggest something probably a little controversial, but I'm going to say those of us who know what we're doing need to give away what we know. We need to purposefully and powerfully connect people, and if that is our goal, we can't have ego in this game. We need to help others to do what we know will be successful so that we can have an end result of everybody connected.
Wow. Abby, okay, thank you. Can you
Amanda
say your
Bergson.
name, your organization, before you ask your question, please?
Hi, good afternoon. Amanda Bergson Shokak from National Skills Coalition, and thank you for this really important panel. My question is about all of us working in these difficult political environments are making choices every day about which compromise is worth it. And so my question for you is, what are the touchstones or the guidelines that you use for yourselves when you're deciding if a compromise is worth it, in terms of partnering with an organization or a person who might support other things that you very much do not support, in terms of making sure that we're not throwing our vulnerable colleagues and community members under the bus in order to try to accomplish some other goal? How are you making decisions about which compromises are worth it?
I'm happy to tell you, I am stubborn, and it's really hard for me to make a compromise. I would say, for me, it's about what my heart and soul can tolerate. And it can't tolerate people being unkind to anybody. And so if that's part of what this potential partner does, I can't be part of it. Would I give back money? Yeah, I really would. There may be another partner who can tolerate it, but I can't tolerate us othering anybody, right? That's not how we do our work. And in the end, if we want people in the community to trust us, we have got to be who we say we are. If we say we're about equity, we dang well better be about equity.
Well, I'm reflecting on, I remember once I got to interview a legend in the semiconductor industry, Dr. Tadashi Sasaki. And one of the things he said was, people need two things in this world to survive. One is food and one is information. I asked him, how do you know if a partnership, the Japanese think so far into the future, and the Americans only think to the next quarter. So how do you know if your counterpart is trustworthy for a long-term relationship? And he said, when I ask them who they're solving this problem for, they will talk several generations down the line, even if it's a short-term solution. Then I can trust that other person. And that just strikes me as something that, we can apply even in this context to really understanding the heart and the motivations of our counterparts doing this work. And then, of course, backed up by, as has been suggested, maybe we now have a templatized NDIA kind of contract around the relationship authenticity tests. But yeah, I think we really have to search deep. We have to have those deep conversations about the future.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
There is.
Okay. Can you please say your name, your organization, and before you ask your question?
Yeah. So hello, I'm Jonah D. Hart Thompson. I work with ACC, and my host site is Clemson University. So coming from the rural South, I come from an impoverished community, also rural. And my question is, I've spent a lot of time in spaces like local governments, like listening sessions for nonprofits and other various things like that. And I'm just curious as to what's the best way that I can give voice to those who maybe do not have voice without stepping on their toes or misspeaking for them. And I know an obvious answer is to listen, and I know another obvious answer is to let them speak. However, in my community, sometimes that's not an option. So I just want to make sure that I'm speaking correctly if I do. Thank you.
What you might want to do is pull together what you believe is the story and share it with them and say, is it okay if I share your story this way? And if not, how should I be sharing your story? I think it's a tricky one because I always would rather let people tell their own stories, but you're right, we don't always have that luxury. Videotape sometimes is another option, but if you have to tell the story for them, I would run it by them first and ask if this was okay.
I'd echo that sentiment. Seeking permission to share story is typically how I operate when it comes to Indian country. It's really difficult for me to make an assumption. I think it's very bold of me to make an assumption. So I simply just humble myself and ask, is it okay for me to share this story? I want to share the story of, the folks that I work alongside with, all the young leadership, and I'm so proud of, them, Mikhail Sundas from Gila River, and the work that he's doing pulling together coalitions. It's, Leslie Hardwick, and Marklee Madera from the Spokane tribe and the work that they're doing to pull together coalitions. Those are amazing stories. Our own Davida Del Mar, in creating this space. Again, I didn't come up here to even say those names without asking their permission first that I can even mention them. H. Trossel from the Minneapolis Reserve, and the fact that she's out there assessing, researching, and is open to challenging research questions around ACP and its impact in Indian country. Shannon Rosenbaum, who's doing work in the Inchelium community, doing the Inchelium Cultural Research Center to bring back an identity in that community when they were a tribal community that was determined to be extinct by the Canadian government, only to find out, only to have to go through a process to reassert. So it's humbling and it's my honor to actually speak these people's names here in this stage. And I think if you and take that as your responsibility to being in that position that you're in, to approach these, ask the permission, and then to carry forward your burden to share their story. So congratulations on being in that position.
Yeah, thank you for your work. And I think looking at the there are artifacts, there are objects that reflect the inequities in our society, who has a voice and who doesn't. There are bylines in the paper, there are agendas, and to the extent that you can make space, flip that script, flip that agenda, who goes first? Is it the person who's making a big check with the money is going to address the audience, or is it the person that surveyed their community to find out, hey, what are the needs here to go get that big check? Who's first on the agenda? When a story is basically written, I see this all the time by people, with lived experience, can that person share in that byline? And so I think that making space and asking that question, how are we making space for these voices, that could be a way for you to negotiate through those artifacts, that sharing.
Thank you all. I have to be really honest right now. I lost track of time at some point, and so I have no idea how long we've been talking. I think we are close to wrapping up. Okay, there's a question up front from Mikhail. Do we have enough time for Mikhail's question? Okay. Okay. One question from Mikhail, and then we're going to wrap up.
I do apologize for grabbing the mic so close to time. I actually wanted to ask Ernie if you could share one of your stories before we close. Something that you told me before, and you totally say no if you don't feel comfortable. But it's about this very thing of maybe like a state wanting to take credit and celebrate before the tribe was ready, even though the tribe was the one that was doing the work. Can you share this story with us?
Yeah. Thank you, Mikhail, for the question and the opportunity to share. And it resonates across all communities because I think it even just builds off from the comment, the question from in the back, and letting your community own their own story. We have this sense of, and I push back on it, saviorship, that the government, other organizations are going to come in and save the community, and that they're going to be, and even if they use the right language around partnership and all these other things. And so in Washington State, deep into the pandemic, the Ho tribal community, which is a tiny tribal community on the coast, out on the very western coast of the United States, completely isolated. And this is before Starlink became so mainstream, before everybody was able. They were one of the first communities to get it. And of course, Starlink didn't give it to them. They had to buy it. They had to pay for it. They had to pay the monthly fee, all this. But they were able to get their Starlink through the assistance of the Washington State Broadband Office, through the assistance of the Department of Commerce, and then of course the governor's office was a part of the whole thing. And as the tribal liaison at the time, one of the things I told the Washington State Broadband Office, with a very charismatic leader who loved to have these political wins, a commerce leader who was, highly political at the time, and of course a governor who was considering running for president at the time, they asked if they could do the press release. They've connected the Ho tribe with this cutting edge technology, and I just said, no, that's not your story. That is not your story to tell. There is no reason that the Ho tribe had any reason to trust you in that partnership. But they did. And they're going to wait, and they're going to see if it even works before they're going to even comment on it. So they sat on it for about 2 weeks, and then the Ho tribe sent out a little tweet that said, it works for us. Getting internet used to be like paddling upriver with a spoon, and now we're connected. This is a game changer for us. And just like that, the governor's office and everyone else piled on, and they did their own press release. They're so proud of the partnership and everything, and it became, of course, very political. When you have wins like that, control your narrative, keep control of your story. It's your story, and don't let someone wrestle it away and take credit. Make sure it's about you. So thank you, Mikhail, for the opportunity to share that.
Yeah. Okay. I want to thank our panelists. Sorry, we're going to wrap things. Oh, no. I want to thank our panelists. You guys are awesome and great. Thank you for all the time you put in prepping. Thank you to the audience for closing out with us. Elizabeth's going to get on stage. We're going to say one final goodbye. Maybe have a dance party? Sure. Some Beyonce?
Of course, Beyonce. Who else would it be? I'm going to grab this microphone. Can we have one more round of applause for this phenomenal panel? What an amazing way, helpful and inspirational to end our conference. So we did it. It's over. I can't believe it. I cannot imagine how tired the NDIA staff are, so I really hope you all get some sleep tonight. This was so much fun, so much information, so much talking, reconnecting with people we know and love, meeting new friends. It's just been amazing. So on behalf of the entire NDIA team, the board of directors, the staff, and all of our volunteers, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you for the incredible work you are doing in your communities. Thank you for sharing and participating. Thank you for expanding the community this week. I had so many people who came up to me and said this was their first net inclusion, and they felt so connected and so welcome. And I know that has been Angela's guiding principle, that no matter how big we get, it's so important that we feel connected, and it's just been wonderful to see that. So please, please, please keep up with us, keep up with the community all year round. You can put the listserv on digest so you don't have a million emails coming in a day. Come to our monthly community calls or A+ calls if your org is part of our Affiliate Plus program. Very excited. Please save the date for Net Inclusion 2025, which will be in Gila River from May 20th to the 22nd, 2025. But please, again, don't wait until then to stay connected. Please join NDIA if you're not already a member. You can join as an Affiliate Plus, or a friend online at digitalinclusion.org/join. And before we go, let's take a very quick look at a couple of highlights put together by Yvette Scores, who everything you see, the posters, the videos, the PowerPoint, everything I say has come from Yvette. So let's give Yvette a huge round of applause. Did anyone else get a little tear in their eye watching that? So finally, please share your feedback with us. I think this conference was amazing and close to perfection, but we always want feedback. We're always thinking about how we can do things better. So there's a QR code on the slides. You also will have an email in your inboxes that has a survey. So please take a few minutes. It would be so helpful for us, so we can continue to make this an inclusive space as well as just a fabulous experience in general. And very last thank you again to Angela and the entire NDIA team. You all have been working for over a year on this, and we appreciate you so much. So please join me in thanking them. So everyone, safe travels, go birds, fly eagles fly, and we'll see you next year at Net Inclusion 2025. Thank you.